In this video, I'm going to teach you how to make a song like this.
The only girl I'd show to my very friends, but I know she wouldn't comply.
So we're in the lab right here, and first we're going to start off with the drums. Now, as you can see over here, I have two different layers for drums. And that's because originally when I started off the song, I was playing the drums with like a MIDI, but it didn't sound very natural. So layered on top of that, I added basically a recording of live drums. So we have the MIDI drums. I have two patterns throughout the whole song. So this first one. And basically the same thing, but a second drum pattern. I took this off from a Tame Impala drum pack, so I have the hat over here, the kick, and the snare. I kind of panned them to the right, to the left, just to give it a bit of space. And then later I added basically the drums, so. Put them together and it sounds like this. So it keeps the punchiness of the MIDI drum while having the natural feel of the organic one. So it's basically, I think it sounds pretty good. Then because I'm weird like that, this isn't even like a Beatles thing, it's just something that I like adding in songs. So I ended up adding some congas. Congas are the superior percussion, and anyone who disagrees, fuck you. And then I added some shakers over here at the end. Everything together. Keep in mind, like 90% of this song is made through like MIDI. Obviously the guitars and the drum, no, but everything else basically, yeah. So for instance, the bass over here. I should also clarify that when I say a Beatles song, I'm referring to the more chamber pop, orchestral, like Baroque pop type sound that they have, which we'll get to the orchestral part in a second. But as for the electric guitar and the acoustic guitar, we'll start off with the acoustic first, which I have it over here. I recorded it with the same mic that I'm recording this right now. Again, I'm doing all this on a very low budget. Because I mean I'm only 17, but yeah, I recorded it with a Blue Yeti microphone. It's only $100. It's not the worst thing in the world. It's obviously not the best either, and there's way better and more professional ways of recording guitar. I think it turned out pretty good, and that's also because I added a couple of effects and plugins. So just this is the guitar. First of all, I got a fruity multiband compressor, and I basically just did this. Like, you can copy these settings. After that, I got a fruity parametric EQ. So I removed all the sub bass because there's a lot of muddy and ugly frequencies that clash with the other instruments, and it doesn't sound too good. Secondly, I went over here and I specifically targeted specific frequencies. Usually these frequencies are in bass and low mid that also sounded very ugly and muddy. And the way I would do that is, so you would go to, for instance, if we wanted to use this is to basically shrink it. So if we were to have it like this and we dropped it down, everything would drop down like that. If we tighten it up like this, only a specific part of the frequency would be removed. This takes a while. Obviously you got to make sure that it all sounds good. Then I added some slight saturation just to make it pop, like you can hear the clear difference. Then a tad bit of reverb. I added some stereo separation, the 88%, 75 wet level, 50 early reflection, 102 dry, and just basically these settings. After adding the reverb, I added a bit more EQ just to emphasize the high notes, the mid and high frequencies, while still dropping a bit the lower frequencies. This is also very important. This is a transient processor, and essentially this would start off like over here in the middle. Essentially the higher you put it, the sharper the beginning, the attack, and it makes it sound much more upfront in the mix. I didn't want it to be too noticeable. I wanted the vocals to shine a bit, so for that reason I left the attack at like about 50, around this area, just to have it more in the background. Then I added a limiter, not for the ceiling or anything, but actually for the noise gates. This is to remove any like white noise or background noise that you might hear in your recording. So in this case, I had the threshold at like negative 32 decibels, so everything under negative 32 decibels will be completely removed once we took the gain and cranked it to 0. But anyway, onto the electric guitar. What you won't probably believe is that this is actually another acoustic guitar. But I actually added a chorus effect to make it sound, I guess, electric in a sense. So similar to acoustic guitar, I got a compressor, then I got a limiter to add some ceiling and a bit of noise gate, then a parametric EQ to raise the highs and remove the lows, sound goodizer. Then I add the chorus. I use these specific effects, then some reverb, some more EQ to, this was for the vocals, so the vocals popped up more in this area, so I dropped down. And then finally a transient processor, also to have it in the back like the acoustic guitar. So that's the first part. You're hearing it right now in the background, and I think it sounds very good. For the instrumental aspect, there is one more thing that I want to add. So I did all of that with one plugin basically, which is the Purity plugin. So first of all, I added a flute, and I tried to do some weird shit with the flute. Like, I didn't want to make it super conventional. I tried to make it kind of a bit more like trippy and psychedelic in a sense. So the way I did that is I added some delay, I added some chorus EQ to remove, I guess, some parts that were a bit annoying, then obviously some saturation to make it pop, and a transient processor to have it more in the front, although with the vocals it ends up being more in the back. And then I added strings, also using Purity. I'm pretty sure you have to pay for this, by the way, just so you know. And I chose the ST fast strings. For that, I added some EQ. I removed a little bit of the treble, raised the peaks over here, remove the sub bit, and then I added a compressor. You can copy down these settings, stereo separator to have it like make it feel more panoramic. Then I added some reverb. You can copy all this down just to also make it wider, and then to nobody's surprise, saturation. And finally, the vocals. One thing you should keep in mind, this is something that I've learned from experience: definitely mix your vocals in mono. This is something recommended by hundreds of professionals, and this is something I just used to never do, but it really does make a difference, because when it's in mono, it sounds much more in your face and just up front in the mix. So I recorded the vocals really quietly, so I quickly added some like fruity balance, just 2.7 decibels, just to make it a little louder. Then I went to multi-band compressor again. It's the bright preset, but with a couple tweaks here and there, so it's not 100% exact. Then an EQ, removing the sub bass as usual, removing an annoying muddy part in the low mid area. I added some noise gates as usual. So I originally had a noise gate with a negative 32 decibel threshold, but I ended up not actually using it because it just didn't sound too good. It sounded kind of choppy. Sound goodizer, about 25%, the usual. A tad bit of reverb, like maybe 50%. This is something you guys are gonna like. This is basically a free De-Esser called TRD Nova. This is like an automated EQ sort of thing, basically a De-Esser. And the way you would do this is you would go over here and go to De-Ess link, and every time the vocals played, it would drop depending on the effects you have over here of threshold and ratio and whatnot. I like how they sound like this, so I kept it at its standard setting. And after that, it's really just like a juggling game of like not having them overpower the instrumental, but at the same time not letting the instrumental overpower it. So I did a lot of like tweaking with the master channel, and I kind of found like a sweet spot at 86%. The backup vocals are similar thing, just with a bit more reverb, but the typical multi-band and EQ and etc. If you've enjoyed how the song has sounded, it would mean the world to me if you can check it out. The link will be in the description and the pinned comment. But before you leave, if you're trying to make a song like the Beatles but you can't sing for shit, click the video on the screen right now for a beginner's guide on autotune.